So, the topic of confidence, something really, really close to my heart, something I've struggled with for years and years and still am. So it's something that I'm really keen to talk about, and I think it's going to be so beneficial for other people also to hear it. And as a confidence coach, I couldn't think of a better person to talk to about this topic. So the first thing, what is confidence? How would you define that?
Confidence, I suppose, if you go back to the Latin root meaning of it, it comes from two words, con meaning with, and I think it's fidere, which means trust. So it means with trust. So if we're thinking about something like self-confidence, it's about having trust with self. So really confidence is about having that faith and that belief. So whether it be in something or someone, in the case of confidence of self, then it's about having that faith and that trust and that belief in yourself.
Can someone be confident? So let's say if they have that belief in themselves, can someone be confident and still experience certain things like imposter syndrome, or at times, do we always feel confident, or are there times when we're less confident? What about when you have particular areas when you're not confident in? Like how does that work?
Well, I suppose it's a little bit like, you can be a naturally very confident person, but that doesn't mean to say that there aren't going to be times, situations, circumstances that steal your confidence. An analogy would be, say, the most patient person that you know. That doesn't mean just because they are naturally very patient, that doesn't mean they're not going to find themselves in circumstances where they lose their patience or they feel a little bit impatient. So yes, people can have natural confidence about them, but it doesn't mean that they necessarily are naturally confident all the time. And something like imposter syndrome, for example, 70% of the population will experience it at least once.
Wow.
It's most predominant in high achieving women and minority groups. But what I would say when it comes to imposter syndrome, so the tagline of my business is Thursday Thought Coaching, but the tagline is breaking lies, building truth. And so one of the best ways we can break lies, even when it comes to the confidence piece and something like imposter syndrome, is awareness. I talk about this all the time, but, both in our professional lives as well as in our personal lives. Awareness is key. And if you think about a soccer team, a football team who know who they're playing at the weekend, they will spend the week studying that other team's form. They will study what their weaknesses are, what their little tricks and patterns are, so they can be aware. So they can be on the front foot, so they can be prepared for it. And similarly with imposter syndrome tends to attack our natural gifts and abilities. Really? Things that come easy to us. So say, because it's about career, say in your workplace, you're all working on a project together, you come into the meeting and people have been there for 2 hours and they're pulling their hair out because they just can't get the solution. And you walk in and you say, what is this, guys? And they're like A, B, C, and you just think and automatically are able to say, well, if you just add A and B together, that'll give you C. And everyone's like, oh my gosh, you're amazing. How did you do that? Imposter syndrome will try to strike then because they all think you're amazing and save the day. Yeah. Deep down within, you're thinking to yourself, I really didn't have to do anything that wasn't really rocket science to me. And that's where we have to be, that's where that awareness piece needs to come in with imposter syndrome. It will try to tell you in that moment, they're going to realize you're not as good as you think you are. And that can start to chip away at your confidence. Whereas when you're able to recognize, well, hold on a wee second, I know why that insecure thought's coming into my head. It's because what I've just done is operate a natural gift and ability. Yeah. And I'm not going to let imposter syndrome take me out. These people are not going to realize that I'm not as good as I think I am because I have simply been operating a natural gift and ability. So again, it's that awareness thing of the way that we kill the lies, the way we break the lies around imposter syndrome is awareness. Just like the football team, if you know what your strengths are, you know what your natural abilities and natural giftings are, then you won't apologize for it. You won't feel guilty or shamed because you don't have to put in as much effort. And that way then you won't lose your confidence on it. But yes, that's definitely one of the ways that, one of the lies that will try to attack your confidence.
Right. And you said something very interesting about studying, kind of that preparation that can eliminate some of that feeling not confident.
Yes.
could people swing the other way? Almost like when over preparing makes you more and more anxious about something. So it's almost drifting into like anxiety. So it's almost like it's chipping away at your confidence because you're almost overthinking it.
Tell me more about that. The overthinking. Give me an example.
So, for example, maybe someone, if they had just gone into that situation, they probably would have kept a lot of confidence. But the more they looked at the situation, the more they consider it because they wanted to be more prepared. That happens to me a lot. If I overthink and, I'll just start looking at all these possible scenarios and then I want to be prepared for them because I think that's going to increase my confidence. Often what it does, it starts chipping away at my confidence because then I will find a number of scenarios where things could just fail. Could that happen? Does that happen to other people?
Well, I mean, yeah,
it happens to me. Does that happen to other people?
It does, but you've actually even just spoken out. That's why I love coaching, because you've actually just spoken out the truth of what's going on. You've realised that when I overthink, when I overprepare, it doesn't serve me well. Yeah. All it does is take me into a spiral of anxiety. So now you know that you have the choice not to.
So
again,
stop.
It's just that awareness. So just in the same way, it's great to have the awareness of what our strengths are, our natural gifts and abilities. Yeah. It's also so helpful for us to be aware of what our weaknesses are. And generally, the weakness and the strength are attached. It's like a blessing and a curse. So you're probably a really diligent, conscientious person, have attention to detail. Every I is dotted, every T is crossed. That's going to make you an amazing employee, work colleague, manager, etc. But then I suppose the little somewhat cursed weakness attached to that is that you can fall into that overthinking. Yeah. And you cannot be prepared for every situation. So for someone like yourself, the way that you would ensure that your confidence isn't chipped away at is probably something you'll hear me say a lot in this podcast is you've got to back yourself. You've got to know this is what I bring to the table and it is enough. Yeah. It is enough. I know I can do this. I've prepared as much as I can, and then you almost need to let it go. It's almost like you need to surrender to the process, and that can be hard for people.
That can be hard.
Yes, because Definitely. We all like to be able to control in every situation. However, rather than focusing on the things that can go wrong, if we can bring the focus back and the confidence back, the power and authority back to know this is who I am and this is what I'm capable of, and all I can do is give my best, then whatever happens after that, you cross that bridge if you even come to it. You know?
That actually leads me to the next question.
Right.
Is there a difference between confidence and self-esteem? Because it sounds like maybe a lot of what you're talking about right now is almost how do you even view yourself?
Yes.
And that feeds into your confidence?
Yes.
Do I understand that?
100%. I mean, often, mostly with my clients, they don't think they necessarily need confidence being built in certain areas, but they might just want to talk to me about career change or a relationship dynamic. But a lot of it comes back to them not having the confidence to use their voice, them not having the confidence to back themselves, them not having the confidence to take a risk, whatever it looks like. But that the confidence is the fruit of the root of self-esteem. So
Got it.
Yes. So if someone's not feeling very confident, it's a reflection of how they see themselves. I'll say that again. If someone's not feeling very confident, it's a reflection of how they see themselves. Good. And it's like there's no hate or shame. There's no hate or shade on this. The reality is life is so full of white noise. We've so many responsibilities. There's so much that takes our attention visually. It's not necessarily in the DNA of our culture. We're not trained to take a moment to stop and look at ourselves and self-reflect and consider. Yeah. And yet knowledge is power. So I find with my clients, if I say to them, 20 seconds, go, tell me all the things you like about yourself. Let me try that with you now, if you're being so willing. Tell me the things you like about yourself. Go.
20 seconds. Go. What I like about myself. I am diligent. I am reliable. I am trustworthy. I think I'm charismatic. At least I think that. I'm friendly. I'm kind. That's turning out to be actually quite good. I've not done too bad, have I?
You've not done too bad, because generally with my clients, we're lucky if we get to 2.
Yeah.
Whereas when I then say to them, okay, so tell me the things you don't like about yourself.
And you know what really helped? Because had I sat here and I had to overthink them, I would probably have discarded most of them.
Right.
Or not seen them as important to mention. But because it was 20 seconds and I was just like, Right. Just go with your hunch. Just go with what you feel.
Go with your gut. That's
Yeah,
you
go with
trusting
your
yourself,
gut.
that's you backing yourself, but at the same time, rather, you still know that about yourself. You still knew all those things. How come you know all those great qualities about yourself?
It's probably because other people have said so.
All right, so that's one of the.
Interesting.
So but they have said it. However, you've also then agreed. You've seen it in yourself. So again, that's a great technique. So my clients are like, I don't know what I like about myself. And I'll say to them, start to listen to the things that people are saying about you. If what you're hearing over and over and over again is, oh, you're so thoughtful. Oh, you're so thoughtful. That's a really thoughtful thing to do. Write that down and become aware of that. And that can be the first, that could be the first thing on the list of things that you like about yourself. Am I thoughtful? A lot of other people are telling me I'm thoughtful. I'm not asking them to tell me that. They're sharing that information. What is it they're seeing in me that makes them think that I am thoughtful? Could I walk in awareness of that moving forward? Could I check myself that, and it's not about navel gazing, don't get me wrong. Yeah. It's not about becoming all self-consumed, but we're trying to build a confidence piece here. We're trying to build people's self-esteem. We want people to get to the place like you were just able to be able to name, quite quickly a number of things they like about themselves. Sometimes people don't know where to start. So as you say, by listening to what others say about you, it can be a really good place.
Love that. I might definitely try that because I do sometimes, I do this funny thing. I have like 360 reviews with my friends.
Oh, very good.
But like the good and the bad. Yes. It's probably the focus is more, can you tell me, am I showing up as a friend to you in the right ways that you need me to show up as a friend? So they're not like formal. I don't hand out questionnaires. Yeah. But I like to ask my friends that because, I love self-improvement and I want to know how can I show up better for you. Well, but I suppose in other ways it serves also as, they have an opportunity to say, well, I really like this about you, but then I'd love if you did more of this.
Right.
So you kind of get a bit of both.
But that also then, what that shows me is it makes sense why you were able to rhyme off quite quickly the things that you like about yourself because you're choosing to do the work. 7%, not 17, not 70, 7% of the population are willing to do the work.
Wow.
Right? Yeah. So probably if there were a room here of 10 people, very few people in the room are going to be able to, share what you've just shared. The majority of people in the room are not going to be able to rhyme off the things that they like about themselves. And that's the starting point really when it comes to building confidence, because I think often when we don't have obviously with confidence meaning about self faith and trust and belief in self, if we are taking our question to other people, if we're letting other people determine who we are, let me rephrase that. If we don't have a strong, healthy sense of self, then if the words that people are speaking over us aren't healthy, if they're negative. Now, in your case, your friends are giving you constructive criticism, but they're also telling you really great things about yourself. But if we don't know that for ourselves, if we haven't done that type of work, it means then that those critical voices that speak really over us, we actually attach ourselves to that. And we take that thinking on as our own. We don't realize it. There's an enmeshment that goes on. And because of that habit of thinking, we then get to a stage where we are actually believing it for ourselves, not realizing that it's not even our thoughts about ourselves. It's words that have been spoken over us that we have just chosen to receive because of not taking the time to think, do I really believe that about myself?
Yeah. So I suppose that's one of the reasons why people might lack confidence is because they have absorbed too much of that negative narrative about themselves and they have believed it.
Totally.
Are there any other reasons why people might, so they're like, why are we lacking confidence? Is that something, because you also mentioned at the start that there could be people who are naturally more confident, and I guess it's that question, nature versus nurture.
I was just thinking it was nature versus nurture.
How much of that is really in our hands?
Yes, it's a great question.
Like, because we all start at different points. Like, how much of that is actually in our hands? How much of that is actually in our hands to help our friends and people around us, our families, our children, to like.
Speaking of children, that's exactly what I was thinking. I used to be a primary school, like a kindergarten teacher, and I would have taught the little 4 and 5 year olds. And yes, they have different personality types.
Yeah.
There'll be ones that are a little bit more extroverted than others. And we all have different personality types. Some of us are more gregarious, others have more of a melancholic, sanguine. I get that. But even within the most timid child in my class, there's still that freedom of expression. Having said that, there is definitely something to do with the nurturing, because if those children are growing up in environments whereby there's passive parenting, there's critical parenting, there's punitive parenting going on, whether that child is 4 or 14, they will react to that. I don't think children come out of the womb necessarily lacking confidence. The little toddlers, the reason they have so many bumps in their head is because they've got that freedom and that independence and that fearlessness to go. But if the children are growing up in environments where there's passive parenting going on, in other words, a lot of parents, and certainly with some of the schools I taught in, the socioeconomic demographic was such that maybe it's a single parent family, or parents have so many responsibilities, or a number of children to look after, that it was, in order for them to simply get everything done, like, let's be real, they were putting their children in front of the computer or in front of the television. So the parents were present, but they were passive. They weren't engaging with those children. And so that, on top of maybe only giving the children the attention to tell them off, that kind of critical parenting, that can chip away at a child's confidence even at that very young age. And when I was studying my postgraduate certificate in education, there was master's points attached to it. So I had to do 2 papers. One was arguing towards a position, and then the second paper was arguing the position. And I took the stance of how positive strategies the positive behavior strategies enhance the learning environment. And there's a really famous voice coach, she's also a theatre director, called Patsy Rodenberg, and she had written a book called Presence, and she told the story about a teacher who was a little bit renegade in a school, whereby when all the classes were supposed to be doing their phonics, this teacher instead recognized the backgrounds that these young children were coming from, and instead she took a moment to sit and look in the eyes of every single child, to let them know that they were seen, that they were heard, just in that one look, that I see you, you're valuable. Just that presence, by her giving her presence to each of these children. And what was unbelievable, by the end of that term or the end of that year, she got the highest results in those children, simply because she was acknowledging them. And by acknowledging them and giving breath to their presence, that was building confidence in them. So even though they were coming from backgrounds where there was that passive parenting or the punitive parenting, so there's definitely something to be said about the nature versus nurturing. Because even in my class, some of the shyest children by the end of the year had grown in their confidence, because we chose, I said to my teaching assistants, as for the children we're responsible for, we're going to speak life over them. We're going to encourage them. We're going to separate the child from the action. We're going to call out their gifts, their natural gifts and their abilities. Everything is going to be positive. The behavior strategies we're going to use are going to be positive. And they didn't just enhance the learning environment, it enhanced the child, it built their confidence. So, you take that into adulthood. By the time you've gone through your secondary and tertiary education, if that's the way that you go, life has a way of knocking the stuffing out of you. And so if from a young age you've maybe had critical voices, and then teachers that are maybe aren't supporting the way in which you learn and just label you and put you in a box, and then as you get older, maybe heartache or rejection from friends or disappointment in a job, without like going down the pity party line for any of us, that can be the reality of the life that we're living in. So yes, there are definitely things that can chip away at our confidence as well, which is why I always use the analogy of, in the gym, the bags that you punch that go over, but then they come back up because they're weighted on the bottom. And we need to be weighted on the bottom, especially nowadays more than ever before. We so need to be weighted down on the bottom, because things will continually peck at you, and things will continually try to chip away at your confidence, because you're created for purpose. You have gifts and abilities in you. They're for the benefit of others. And there are things and there are pressures, resistance that's going to try and stop you from stepping out and being all that you are, you know. And so whether that's the voices of others, the opinions of others, asking people for their opinion of you and letting that be the determining factor, all of these things can chip away at our confidence, which is why we need to be weighted in the truth of who we are.
There's such a beautiful thought I recently heard about resilience. Because when you mentioned that bag kind of bouncing back, and I looked up the definition of resilience, and the definition said something that it's almost like the description of elasticity. And I thought, wow, because some people, they kept being knocked down, but what they do, they heal. But when we naturally heal, like even our bodies, we heal with scars. Our bones don't heal the same way. They're a bit lumpy and bumpy at places. And when we have that, what happens with the scar tissue builds up, and the tissue that has scar, our skin, becomes less elastic. So I think like the healing and the resilience, like it was such a beautiful thought to think that resilience is not building up higher walls and like not letting anything get to you, because that's not good either. You want to keep that elasticity, that ability to bounce back.
The challenge in life is that whole thick skin, tender heart. You know, how do you remain resilient but still keeping that heart soft and palatable? And again, it all comes back to how you see yourself. I think about friends of mine who've maybe gone through romantic hurts, and a phrase that I coined a long time ago, which has served me well, is it's not rejection, it's protection.
So true.
It's all about how we reframe the narrative. But it's harder to reframe a narrative like that if you don't have a good opinion of yourself. But if we go down the romantic route, if you know what you bring to the table, if you know who you are, if you know, okay, we're all a work in progress, none of us are perfect. But when you have that humility and that kind of teachable spirit like you have, where you're continuing to want to learn about yourself and grow and be the best version of yourself, if then something steps away from your life or lets you down in a way, it's actually a form of protection over you, because it's not deserving of you. They're not deserving of you. So say you go for a job interview and it's a thanks but no thanks.
Yeah.
So easy to fall into rejection. So easy to believe the lies that it's all about you. Now we can take stock. We can definitely do a quick 360 of ourselves and be like,
feedback. Why?
Totally. Get feedback from them, but also to sit and self-reflect. You know, reflection and action of had I prepared and again, it's not from a place, it's from a place of love and being kind to self. It's not about hating on self.
Yeah.
It's not about placing shame on self. It's about being our own best cheerleader, where we can say, did I prepare the best that I could for that? Had I done all the research and sourced all the resources that I could to support myself? If I was to go again, would I do anything better? And take yourself through those questions, so that if you're like, do you know what, I really was the best prepared I could be, then there's that freedom of just like, I can yield to the fact that this isn't for me. And I've seen it with people even in a workplace where they've been so disappointed that they've not got in, and then 2-3 years down the line, all this crazy stuff has taken place in that work environment where they're like, wow, I'm so glad that I wasn't there and didn't end up in the mix of all of that. It's not rejection, it's protection. But again, if you don't have a healthy sense of self, it has the potential to take you out, or to take you down a route that isn't healthy.
That isn't
in
healthy.
Your thinking.
Yeah. No, that's so true. So when I was changing my careers, I applied to 90 jobs and I was rejected from every single one of them. And I think my applications gradually went from like kind of medium positions to like washing the dishes.
Right.
And I was rejected from those jobs too, but it was because something else was aligned in the future that was just the right thing for me to be in. But you're right. Hearing that rejection, it's so disheartening.
Yes.
And you start thinking, there must be something wrong with me.
Say that again.
Something wrong with me.
You start to think, so this is where our free will comes in. We do have choice. And I say this really carefully, but that was a choice that you made to allow that thought. Because these thoughts will forever be knocking on the doors of our minds. Yeah. We have to take those thoughts captive. We cannot give them, we cannot afford to give them a foothold. Because once they get in there, they can snowball. People, you hear people talking about spiraling. We cannot afford to let that negative talk in. But if the rhythm of thinking, if the rhythm of self-talk that we're used to, that is a familiar coat to us, is already negative,
Yeah.
then we're not even aware of it. I had a speaking engagement recently, and I used the analogy of, for those of us who drive, if you do a familiar route every day, there are times when you drive from A to B and you don't even recall the journey. It's like, how did I even get here, right? Yeah. Because it's so familiar, you're not even aware.
Yeah.
It's the same with our negative talk cycles.
Yeah.
We're so not aware that we're thinking that way because it's what we always do. So for you to say, oh, there must be something wrong with me, probably that's not the first time, respectfully, in your life that you've thought that about yourself.
No,
okay.
No, it's not.
Right.
Definitely
so
not.
It's such a familiar self-talk that you won't even be aware that it's negative. You won't even be aware of the fact that it's lies. But if I was to sit here and call you out on it, in a healthy way, and be like, what makes you think? Where does that thought come from that it must be you?
Yeah.
Because that's a very strong thing to say to yourself, that it must be you. Where does that thought come from? So we won't go there now. Let's probably leave that for a private session.
But otherwise it's going to be forever.
But do you get me? We have to stop and go,
yeah.
That is such an extreme thing to say, that it must be me. Where does the confidence come within you?
Where there's so much negative confidence, right?
Exactly.
It's confidence in the negative sense.
That's what I mean.
I'm confident it's me.
Yes, but there's such a strength and power and authority behind it. Well, it must be me. Really?
Yeah.
Must it?
Yeah.
Is it not? Could it not potentially be one of many other factors?
Maybe me, or that's already
right.
softer, right?
So even if it was,
yeah.
And that would be the goal.
Yeah.
So even when I'm setting goals with my clients, it's not about going from A to Z. It's about going from A to B.
It's comparing yourself to your yesterday version rather than comparing yourself to someone else.
Well, I'm not even one for comparing. I hear what you're saying, that you want to become a better version of yourself, 100%. But we're only looking back to celebrate and champion how far we've come.
That's
100.
true.
I think that's what you're saying, right?
Yeah.
But for us to shift our language, if we're breaking through a negative thinking pattern that's been ingrained for so long, we're not going to go from must to never, or couldn't possibly, in one go. But if we can journey from must to maybe, that's a good step, because within the maybe, there's the possibility that it's not you.
Yeah.
And that's a really great way to begin to break that negative thinking, and it allows those little cracks for the light to shine in, for the truth to shine in, because there's the possibility of, maybe it's not me.
Yeah.
And from there we can begin to build the truth. Yeah,
you're so right when you say that we don't do enough self-reflection, because I think I've always had the negative, there's a lot going on, right? And for most people that's true as well. But what I've realized recently, it was one morning I woke up, before I got out of the bed, it was one of those moments when you almost like float above yourself. You just suddenly like observe what's going on. And I think I had 5 or 6 like scenarios and like thoughts. They weren't even thoughts, they were like full-blown scenarios of how I'm going to fail that day. By the time I reached the door to get out of my room, I think I already had like a baggage of evidence, like statistical evidence of how am I going to fail?
Right.
What's the reason behind failing? So by the time I left my room, I was convinced I was going to fail. And I literally observed my confidence go down, my mood go down, everything crumbled around me. And I just caught myself almost self-indulging in this little scenario running in my head. And it was so strange, because I think for the first time I was like, whoa, hang on, what's going on here? I barely left my bed 5 minutes ago and the whole world has come crashing down and nothing even happened. So it's so true that if you can just start catching yourself in those moments, I think that's probably already a good start. Just recognizing that, I think I just had a negative thought. Yes. Are you even aware that you're having them? Because I wasn't even aware that I was having any.
Yes, and I think that's the thing. Like one of the sassy little comments I use with myself and my friends, my loved ones, my clients is, that rhythm of thinking that you woke up with and in a way allowed.
Of course.
How's that working out for you? How did that work out for you?
Not great. Not great. Like my whole mood was down. My energy was down. I didn't feel up for doing anything. And I really had to pull myself together and be like, no, hang on.
But you did.
I did eventually, but it was probably one of the first times in my life where I did that.
Wow.
Because I suddenly realized that it felt way too familiar. It wasn't like, oh wow, this is new. No, it felt familiar, which probably means I've been doing that for a long time.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. But you know, that first step, that's the breakthrough beginning.
Yeah.
And that's key. And I suppose it's like any muscle that you're training. I'm a real queen of analogies, so sorry if it gets...
I love it. I love it.
But actually, I'm really going to apologise. That's who I am. See, that's work in progress.
Work in progress. There we go.
Catching it and reframing it. This is who I am. I love that I'm a queen of analogies.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
But if you think about if you're going to the gym and you say you haven't been to the gym for like ever.
Yeah.
And the first time you go to the gym and you begin to work out those muscles, it's uncomfortable, it's sore, it feels like hard work. Why would you want to keep doing it? But the more that you do it and the more diligent you are and the more consistent you are with it, then you start to feel the benefits. One of the main benefits being you feel stronger, you know? It's similarly with your thoughts. So that probably was a very hard thing to do because it's the very first time that you've caught it. It will require an awful lot of effort, an awful lot of energy. But the more that you do it, the more you're beginning to kind of, in a way, you're carving out a new pathway in your brain. It's going to take time. And that's where consistency is key. But it's also not something you have to do on your own. You know, accountability, the way you speak to your friends about the 360, it's also about communicating with trusted ones, with loved ones, to say, hey, I've realized this about myself. So now I know that about you. You know, I'll be checking in with you and say, you know, or say, look, check in with me. How's that going? Are you practicing? How often when you wake up in the morning these days are you being flooded?
Out in the conversation.
Yes.
I was like, hang on, where's that coming from?
Yes, I do that with my friends all the time. For example, you know, you pay somebody a compliment.
Yeah.
Oh, I love your top. And they'll say, oh, but sure, I just got this on sale.
Oh, we do that a lot,
Just say thank you. So my friends know I'm a great one for calling them out and say thank you. They didn't have to give you the compliment.
Yeah.
You don't even have to agree. Simply receive. But even that is a breakthrough, the beginnings of a breakthrough in them. Because for them to receive a compliment, that means that they're receiving goodness. They're receiving truth about themselves. And that's already going to begin to counteract negative self because they're quick to rebuke it. It's like they don't want to receive the truth because probably they're so used to this negative thinking, and that's what's familiar.
Yeah.
So yes, it takes time, and this is why only 7% are willing to do it, and yet on the other side of it is life, is freedom, is truth. It's wonderful.
That's so good. We very briefly touched on something, comparison. And I have read something that there is research out there that basically suggests that people who experience maybe higher levels of kind of social comparison, so they're more used to kind of comparing themselves to someone, or they experience that kind of sense of perfectionism, I must be perfect, that they're actually more prone to engaging in negative self-talk. So they have probably way more of that negative kind of narrative going on in their heads. And I know that also you recently did an episode of podcast on comparison. What are your thoughts around that?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of goes hand in hand, and it's kind of that thing of the chicken and the egg, isn't it, really? But
Which one comes first?
Yeah, but I really do think it's about how we see ourselves. When we grow in our view of ourselves, we will compare in a different way. And it's something I think I did mention on my podcast episode about the healthy comparison.
I was going to say, when is it good to compare yourself to some like a higher standard that you're aiming towards, rather than having that unhealthy kind of pulling yourself down comparison?
Well, a little technique that I encouraged my listeners to do was, because everybody's on social media, when you're scrolling through the people that you follow, become aware of what it does in your physiology. So if you're scrolling and it kind of gives you knots,
like in your body.
Yeah, your actual physical body, like physically, your body talks to you. So as you're scrolling through your social media, how does your physical body react to what you're reading?
Interesting.
And if it's something that gives you knots, or you tighten up, or you start to get a sinking feeling, I will want to encourage people listening that even just for the say like for 3 weeks to a month, mute. So you don't have to unfollow those people, just mute those accounts. And what you want to keep in terms of your feed are the things that lift you, that encourage you, that empower you, that inspire you, that warm your heart, that challenge you in a healthy way to become a better version of you. That's truth. And that type of comparing is healthy. So for example, a lot of people that I will follow will be people who inspire me, businessmen and women who started out like I did, and they're chipping away and want to make a difference and want to flip the script and want to change the narrative. But I can see within them that there's an authenticity. I can see that there's no hidden agenda. What you see is what you get. They're the kind of people that I'm inspired by, and yes, they are successful but still have their feet on the ground, all that. And so in terms of comparing myself to them, it's not even really a comparing, it's more an aspiring. It's like, wow, if they've been able to achieve that puts fuel in my belly to take the gifts and abilities and the passion that I have and to go. Especially I listen to people that talk about they've had it go and it didn't go a certain type of way, and then they dust themselves down, they pick themselves up, that resilience piece, and they go again. That's amazing, because that's real.
Yeah,
that's real. Those people who are willing to have that unfiltered life and let you see it all, like the real talk, as opposed to the filter culture. To me, that is where comparison can be a healthy thing if it's going to fuel you and challenge you in a way that's light, bright, and truthful. Where the comparison piece is unhealthy is that generally we do compare up the ways, that phrase, we compare up the ways, therefore we always come back off as second best. You never want to compare. Comparison is a choice. We're choosing to do it. We don't have to. But again, it's a rhythm, it's a pattern, it's a familiar code that we're not even aware that we're in. But we can be having the best time, and then we get on social media and we scroll and we see somebody living out a version of the life that we think is great, but on a higher level. Then all of a sudden we feel inadequate, we feel less than, we feel like we're not enough just as we are. It comes back to that question that I said to you of, well, how is that working out for you? How is it serving you? How does it benefit you to allow yourself to compare to that person? And as I said in my podcast, you have to make a choice. You either mute that person's account because you recognize that it's not serving you in this season, or you accept the fact that because of their lifestyle, their life choices, maybe because of privilege, whatever, they're having success in a way that the reality is you'll never be able to attain that kind of success. So what's the point in comparing yourself to them? It's like chalk and cheese. It doesn't benefit you in any way, and really you'd be better off unfollowing people like that and shifting yourself into people who are going to encourage you and inspire you because they're relatable. Do
you think, so obviously you mentioned social media, and there's so much talk about what that actually does to us and what that does to our relationships, the way that we view ourselves. And there's so many issues right now with teenagers, especially like teen girls, going through that comparison. Do you, because you've been doing this for years now, do you sense that people are having more problems with confidence, or are things improving? So it's like, where are we shifting in terms of our society currently? What have you been seeing?
I mean, there's definitely post-COVID, there's a real epidemic, really, when it comes to social anxiety and comparison, for sure. I think for a lot of people, I mean, I worked through COVID, but for a lot of people, they were being paid to stay at home. And so scrolling just became an everyday occurrence. But because the 2 meters distance apart, people are really struggling with interactions again, but also have these unhealthy habits of looking at everybody else's lives. So that hasn't helped at all. I really feel for the Gen Alpha. I think they're like the 11-year-olds plus the Gen Alpha coming through, because I think about people, people in their 30s, 40s, 50s who maybe are on the tail end of like things like the internet and social media coming in. And if I think about even for us, what we navigate in terms of the comparison piece and the social anxiety, I really am very concerned for those younger generations,
Yeah.
because it's all they've known. You know, children are being given phones and access to the internet at such a young age, and even with parental restrictions on things like YouTube, you know, what media and the arts and entertainment industries, what they are producing these days, and the narrative that's being fed to these young minds is extremely concerning. However, on the positive side, what I am seeing, because we are privy to so much more information, is I feel like with the younger generations, they're not so much about the binge drinking culture anymore. I'm not seeing that so much. What I'm actually seeing, which is lovely, is generations who are wanting to look after themselves, you know, so they're working out and they're having their juices, and they're doing their breathing techniques, and they're living much more wholesome lives, and they're aspiring, and they want to save their money, and they, you know, that's really, really exciting to see. Unfortunately, you know, as much as that is happening, as I say, there is this issue around young people's mental health, which is so very, very challenging. And I personally was on my way out of social media when I then set up my business. Oh. And if it wasn't for my business, I wouldn't be on social media, because I don't think it's healthy. But I was challenged within myself to think, well, you know, somebody has to do something about it.
Yeah.
So if I'm going to be on social media, then I'm going to use it for good. I'm going to try and change the narrative for the younger generations that are following me. So yeah, it's a tricky one, really, in terms of self-confidence. I think probably is at an all-time low in people. I definitely see it in my clients, and they're not necessarily young. You know, my clients would be, I do have clients in their 20s, but a lot of my clients are in their 30s and their 40s and their 50s. And it's actually something I've said in one of my podcasts to the young people. It was like, don't think this gets better with age, because the majority of my clients are older in age, and they are still dealing with the confidence issue. So yeah, I don't think COVID helped at all. I think they say that more than 2 meters apart, the hearts can't connect. So,
really?
So dangerous, right? So we had a number of years there where we were so isolated. Our hearts were so isolated. In many ways, even within families, people had a shield because some were out working, and some. It was a very, very, very testing time. It also stirred up so much fear in people, because we like to be able to control and plan and know what we're doing. And certainly for at least the first year and a half of COVID, it was the fear of the unknown. We didn't even know what this virus was that we were dealing with. So that has, I think a lot of us actually are walking in PTSD that we're not even aware of. The PTSD that we're walking in. People have anxieties now, and they don't understand why they have anxieties. I'm hearing my clients say things like, I don't understand, because it never used to bother me before.
But now it does. Yeah.
Yes, but I'm saying to them, finish your sentence, before what? And they're like, I don't know. So then we have to do the timeline and go back and be like, where was the change? And for a lot of them, it was through COVID. So there's a lot of work to be done. Most definitely. We need to challenge the social media culture that is luring our young people into lies as to this is what life looks like, and this is how you need to look, and this is how you need to be, and this is what you need to have. So I do think there's an army of us that are starting to rise up in social media to say, actually, let me present truth to you, and it will resonate. So that they have that comparison, in a sense of, they can be scrolling through all these accounts that have been influencing them up until now, but if they have a different option, if they have truth being spoken out to them, then hopefully my hope would be that they can sense within themselves, oh, when I follow that person's account, it gives me knots. But when I listen to what this person is saying, I feel a bit more relaxed. I feel a little bit more encouraged. Yeah. So I do think those of us who are in the older generations, and what I mean by older, I mean if you're 30 and above, I do think we have a responsibility to the 11 years plus age. So that would be the Gen Z and the Gen Alpha. We definitely have a responsibility to, for those of us that are on social media, to be different and to present truth. And yes, I do think COVID has really had an awful knock-on effect to people's confidence. My hope is that even with something like this podcast, that people become aware and start to ask themselves the question of, oh, has my confidence been knocked? Am I even aware? Oh, is that maybe why I get a little bit panicky when I'm invited out to something socially? Is that why I'm feeling like, oh, I couldn't be bothered? I couldn't be bothered going out. Have I always been somebody that couldn't be bothered going out? Or is that a knock-on effect of COVID? And is that stopping me from getting out and living? And has COVID chipped away at my confidence and I'm not aware of it? So a lot around that.
Yeah. So you mentioned two things already, almost like little tools or resources, how you can start having more of that awareness. And you mentioned, when you're scrolling through social media, pausing to think and reflect, how does this person's account or what I'm seeing making me feel? And then you also mentioned, like waking up in the morning or just saying, what do I like about myself, running through that little exercise. Are there any other kind of small things that we can kind of graft into our day, into our schedule, that can help us be more aware of how we kind of go about our business daily?
Yes, I think one of my favorite ones, and it's something you kind of touched on earlier, is when you have written a list of the things that you like about yourself, and let's say the only thing you like about yourself is the truth that you know that you're capable. Now, we've heard people talking about speaking out your affirmations, and there's nothing wrong with that. And it can be quite empowering when no one else is looking, to be able to stand in front of the mirror and say, I am capable, and you stand in the Wonder Woman stance and all that confidence piece, right? But let's be real, like life can be hard sometimes. We can be weary, we can be juggling a lot of plates. Your back is up against the wall and deadlines in terms, in the workplace. Standing in front of the mirror, especially say through the winter months when it's dark and you've had not a lot of sleep, standing in front of the mirror first thing in the morning saying, I am capable, it's just not going to cut it. So what I like to do is to take that truth about ourselves, but anchor it in evidence. And it's something you talked about earlier about the evidence, but you talked about how you allowed yourself to find all the false evidence. So fear, F-E-A-R, is false evidence appearing real, right? So what you were allowing your brain to do in that season through habit was collating lots and lots of fear. Lots and lots of fear of all the things that are going to... It was all evidence, but it was all false. And so what we need to do with the truth of, say, for example, I am capable, we need to anchor it in evidence, truth evidence. So there is a difference when you are weary and overwhelmed, standing in front of the mirror and saying out loud, I am capable, versus I know that I am capable, because at the end of Q4 in 2023, when all my work colleagues were losing their heads because our back was up against the wall with that deadline, I had the ability to keep calm, I had the ability to come up with a solution, and I had the ability to steer the ship to get us to where we needed to be. So because and therefore I was capable then, I know I can be capable today.
Yeah.
So much stronger, so much more empowering.
Stronger. Yeah.
And because it's the truth that's coming from within. It's not because I'm saying to you, oh Laura, you're capable. Anybody can say that. But when you can anchor yourself in the truth that comes from within, based on your own experience, based on something that you have walked through, it's such an empowering technique. So you can use that throughout your day at any given point. Oh my gosh, I'm so tired. I don't think I'm going to be able to do today. Wait, I will be able to do today, because I remember that season when I thought this before.
Yeah.
And yet I was able to do A, B, C, and D. So I'm going to be able to do today.
Yeah. It actually reminds me of something I heard recently about, it's called a brag book.
Right.
And it's essentially what you're saying, but it's, when you're in that moment when things are going well, don't waste that moment of just kind of floating around and being all well, but also capture it. Capture all the things all the
100.
wins that you've had.
Totally.
And you create this little brag book, because there are going to be days when you're not going to believe yourself in the mirror, and you're going to be able to flip through that little brag book, a little confidence book, whatever you want to call it, and actually see the evidence of, Q4, Q3, last year, 2 years ago, I did all of these things. This is what people have, maybe said about me, the compliments that I received and I chose to accept. But you write those things on your good days, so that on your bad days, you're able to flip through and just be like, yes, this is the evidence, this is the truth.
That's a technique I spoke about in one of my talking heads maybe last year, and it's that thing of let's not forget to remember. So the lies want us to forget. The lies want us to forget about those times in the past, and it's exactly my recommendation is we've got to have those little memorial stones. We've got to, so journal. And it's exactly that.
Journaling.
Get it all down on paper on those good days, but also be speaking it out loud on those. That's your arsenal. Start speaking those things out loud on your good days. Get that into your psyche. Get that into who you are, so that on the bad days and on the ugly days especially, you're not having to go, oh, I haven't even got the energy to go find that book. No, it's already in you.
It's in you.
When I was younger, we would have learned at school our multiplication tables by rote. In other words, we just had to say over and over. 2 times 2 is 4. 2 times 3 is 6. 2 times 4 is 8. Again. 2 times again. You know, and if you watch any athlete, or repetition is key. Again, do it again, do it again, do it again. It's about muscle memory.
Yeah.
And the mind, as I talked about earlier, it's a muscle and it needs working. So doing it again. This is why the morning routine is so important, and that's tough because I'm a creative, so mornings are not my natural go-to. So work in progress. Okay. But actually being able to get into our morning routine, do you know what? I am capable because I remember therefore today. You know, I am going to achieve today because then, therefore today. You know, I am going to use my voice in that meeting because back then and therefore today. And I'm needed, I am wanted, I have purpose because this, and this, and therefore let's go. And by getting that in, and that's why I think it's so important, you know, for maybe people here listening who are parents or want to be parents one day or about to give birth, start speaking that life over your children from the minute they are born. Start to speak out, but don't just simply say you are brave. Tell them why. You are brave because, you're kind because.
Build that evidence.
Teach it to them. Some things are caught and some things are taught. So children will catch it in terms of they'll hear mommy and daddy speaking kindly to each other or not. Right? So definitely become aware of that. But actually then some things are also taught. And what will happen is eventually then you will say to your child, I am, and they'll be able to say it. Because, therefore, you can prompt them, but then they'll get it. Now we've missed out on that. But we have to look after our inner child. Yeah. It might not have been looked after to this point, but life is not over. Life is just beginning really on a whole new level. You take this awareness, you comfort and you nurture and you look after your inner child, and you get this stuff into you on the good days, so that in the bad days, no drama, and on the ugly days, you're still winning.
Yeah. Right. So where do you really see the role of confidence in career change? Because like for me, there's probably like loads, everything I can think about, just almost like, you know, as you said with your clients, it just always bounces back. You may think it's about something else. Actually, at the end of the day, it's about your confidence. What are maybe some of the most common areas that you've worked with people on where their careers or maybe their decisions about their careers have been severely impacted by the lack of confidence, or have been positively impacted when they were able to build up that confidence?
That would be it. Once we built their confidence up, then they were then able to make decisions that served them. You know, sometimes people think that it's about changing career, but what they don't realize is they still take themselves with them to the next place. So it'll be like, if I move there, then, you know, they'll all be really nice. They'll see me, they'll hear me, they'll appreciate me. Probably won't. So there's a deeper work to be done there, because this is actually about you. There's something within you that wants to be seen, that wants to be heard, that wants a voice, and it hasn't been. So let's look at that. How come? Where does that come from? What do we need to do to support you in that? And then as a result of that, actually, they're able to go back into that particular workplace with a very different perspective of self, because we've reframed it, and therefore they've actually not felt the need to change career at all.
That's
so the
so
confidence
true.
has been built within themselves, and it's not about the environment externally, it was about the environment within. Having said that, there are others that have needed their confidence to be built within to take that step, because deep down inside, you were talking earlier about trusting your gut, deep down inside they know that they know that they know that they're just not meant to live their life using their skills to pay the bills. They know that there is more that they've been created for, there's more that they've been purposed for. They want to leave a legacy, they want to leave a dent, they want to change a narrative, and they know they're in the wrong soil. And then fundamentally what that comes down to is risk, because there's always going to be risk involved. But it's about working with the client and walking them through which is going to be the higher risk, or rather, which, you know, it doesn't always work with everybody, but taking them later down the line in their life and getting them to look back and think, well, which would you regret more? Would you regret stepping away from a job that made you miserable because it meant being, financially unstable, or would you regret not scratching the itch and risking and exploring the land? And it is a tricky one, because there are a lot of people who have other factors outside of themselves that they have to consider when it comes to changing careers, whether it be mortgage or a spouse or children. But what I would say is there will always be stumbling blocks and limiting beliefs.
Yeah.
And it's about working through all of those limiting beliefs of I can't. I would have said to the children at school, you can't, there's no such thing as I can't. I can with a little help. That's exactly the same as adults who think I can't do that. Well, I can see that you want to, so what is it that makes you think that you can't? Let's explore that. Where does that thinking come from? And breaking that down. And often I'll say to them, close your eyes. Sit in that self-talk right now where you're hearing yourself saying, there's no way I'd be able to do that. There's no way I'd be able to do that. I said, can you hear that voice? Can you hear that voice? Yes. Now with your eyes closed, whose voice is it? And generally it's the voice of a primary carer, a primary school, a kindergarten, primary school teacher, someone that's broken their heart, in a peer group, the loudest voice that had influence over the group. Generally it's not their own voice.
How interesting.
Yeah, so being able to clear that out of the way and be like, okay, well now what do you actually believe? Let's just take a moment, move those voices out of the way, and you don't have to worry about the knock-on effects to anybody else. What do you actually believe? Do you think you can?
Yeah.
And generally it's a yes. So it's like, okay, so we'll start there. And then we start to put the stabilizers on and build the building blocks to bring them to a place of being able to realize for themselves, I'm now ready to take that step. I'm now ready to explore the land. And there's a lot of fear around failure, so it's about reframing failure as well. And would you not rather step out and have a go, because you've got such a wonderful CV there anyway, that you can step out and have a go, and if it doesn't work out, if you then come back to this field that you were originally in and apply for another job, in the interview process you can say, I wanted to go develop more skills to bring it back into this. But would you not rather go and explore? And even the failing isn't a fail, it's a learn. Either you win or you learn. You can take what you've learned from that and pour that back in to the next job. So there are layers. There's definitely layers when it comes to the career change. And it's always really tricky, I suppose, to answer a question like that, because I'm so passionate about the individual. Rather than giving some kind of blanket statement. So I would have to sit down with the individual and ask them a series of questions to learn more about who they are. And actually, where I am maybe different to a therapist or to family or friends is I don't give my opinion, I don't give advice, and I don't tell them what to do. I hold the space. I know the questions to ask because the truth is within them. And sometimes people just need that. My clients talk about just needing that person in their corner, they say, where they can actually just talk out their thoughts, because deep down inside, any of your listeners that are considering a career change, deep down inside they know what they want to do, or deep down inside they know what's going on. For some people, the reason they want a career change, it is escapism. It's running away because they don't want to have to confront the ugliness they think is in their workplace is actually reflective, it's projection, it's actually something that's going on inside of them. But they don't want to have to deal with that, or they don't want to have to deal with that character flaw within them that could do with being, kind of worked out a little bit. So it's easier to be like, do you know what? I'm just going to remove myself. They don't get me. Me. Well, it goes back to what we were saying earlier about maybe, not it must be me, but maybe could it be me?
Yeah.
Is there something within me that maybe needs softening, that needs sharpening, that is there a weed in me that needs to be rooted out? So there's layer upon layer upon layer when it comes to the career change. But fundamentally, I would say it does come back to how you see yourself. And I often talk about like the Glastonbury Festival, music festival. I've sat on the fence with Glastonbury for so long. I have friends who love it and go every year because they know that's their vibe. I then have friends who are like, not for me. Whereas because I love music so much, but I'm not so sure about the kind of mucky side of it, I'm like, I'm not too sure. But fundamentally, there's a part of me that is so curious that actually I just need to go and experience Glastonbury. And if I hate it, then I can say I've done it and it wasn't for me.
Yeah.
You know? So I would say for people who are considering a career change, there's something deeper going on there, because otherwise you would just not even be considering a career change.
Yeah.
I don't know if that seems like so simple, but generally these things are very simple. If you're happy with where you're at, you're not considering a career change.
Yeah.
So if you are considering one, either there's something pulling you because it is the way that you're meant to go, or there's something challenging you to look at yourself. I suppose if you were to take one thing away from today, I would probably want to challenge your thinking and get you to consider, what could life look like for you if you were to take the time to build genuine confidence within yourself. If you were to take even just say the next couple of months and decide that self-care wasn't necessarily going to be the mani-pedi spa, you know, and there's nothing wrong with that. Those external things are important. But what if the self-care was to actually be internal, for, you know, internal work, and you were to take the time to build your confidence? What could life look like for you?
Yeah.
Could it mean a good night's sleep?
Yeah.
Could it mean using your voice? Could it mean healthier relationships? Could it mean you stepping out and being a bit brave and doing something that you've always wanted to do? Could you feel lighter? Could you feel freer? Could you feel happy?
Yeah.
Could you actually begin to enjoy your life in a way that you never thought was possible? So I suppose all I want people to go away with, and obviously this is to do with career change as well, so really just take yourself to a place of imagining, if I had the confidence, if that confidence was within me, and it was genuine confidence within me, what could life look like for me? And I think if you can see yourself there, then maybe consider taking the first step and doing a little bit of the work.
Where can people find you? How can people get in touch if they do want to continue this conversation?
Yeah, I mean, on Instagram, Thursday Thought Coaching, it's just the name of my business. You can email me, marcia@thursdaythoughtcoaching.com. I haven't been on LinkedIn. I've done nothing with LinkedIn, but I am going to now moving forward. And I think you just type in my name, Marcia Cassidy, into LinkedIn. Or they can just ask you.
Okay, yes, fair enough. I'll make sure your details are included so people can reach out if they want to just continue the conversation.
Yes, and please do. My first coaching session is free, so nobody really has an excuse not to come and continue the conversation, and maybe they'll get all that they need out of that freebie, and who doesn't love a freebie? So